Thank you for joining us on a beautiful April the 26th. So we are having our normal, regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting. We will begin tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation. So if I could ask you to please all rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Merciful Father, we come to you today and thank you for the countless blessings that you give us. As we begin this evening in this meeting, Lord, we ask for your wisdom and for your guidance. Lord, lift us up tonight as we deliberate. And Lord, we ask that we lift up and you lift up those that we are honoring tonight for their accomplishments, for their hard work, and for their God-given talents. Lord, help us engage in a meaningful discussion around our bond package and our budget, and help us to clearly see our mission and do what is right by all. In all that we do and say in this meeting, may our actions and our words be pleasing to you. Amen. So I believe we have one item that we need to add to our agenda, and that would be action item D, consider approval of the CTE pilot course at Carver High School for information technology. Do we have any other changes to the agenda? If not, do I have a motion to amend the agenda? Thank you, Ms. Taylor and Mr. Vic Johnson. All in favor? Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on Donald Dunn as he will introduce our Poet Laureate winner this year.
Good evening, Dr. Emery Board. On behalf of Forsyth Education Partners, which is a non-partisan group of educating interesting volunteers, we do the Poet Laureate. The Poet Laureate, what we do here right currently, is in high school, and we tell them to do a poem, and then we submitted it. This year is the 8th year that we've actually done it. You guys have a copy of the book of all the poems that were done. We published that book, and they are for sale, so we'll have some at the back in case some of the members of the audience want to buy some. The huge thing, what we like about it is we get a chance to tap into the talent. This year, our winner is Celeste Cervantes from R.J. Reynolds. She's going to be an educator, so you can hurry up, grab her now, and keep her going. Celeste's poem, I read it, and it very much touched our heart. And one of the things we took away from a lot of the poems is that they're personal, but they're very touching, very emotional. And when I read Celeste, it really brought a lot to me. Celeste is going to go to UNCG, and then she says that she does want to be an educator. So Celeste, on behalf of the relationship with the Board of Education for Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, and Education Partners, thank you for what you do. And the board would like to shake her hand, or?
Yes.
You got your certificate, okay. I was looking for it.
Are we going to be able to hear the poem this evening?
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful. Okay. Well,
Do you have it?
I can recite it.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I didn't.
Right,
Thank you so much, Mark.
wonderful. Well, if you can, well, since I'm up here, and we'll just keep going. But so on behalf of the Board of Education, we would like to give you the certificate of recognition. I had the pleasure of being in the audience that night that we had the Poet Laureate, and you did a fantastic job. And all of our students really do a great job, and I appreciate all the work of the volunteers that put this together, and the students with their time, and as well as showcasing some of our poets, but also some of our artists, and being able to mirror some of the artwork with the poems. And though they're not meant to be together, they always tend to tie in with one another. And so we thank you for that, and hope we're not putting you on the spot, but if you would do that tonight, I believe that not all of our board was able to be there that evening, and we would appreciate it. And so, and after then, if you will come, and I think everyone would like to shake your hand and say congratulations. Okay, thank you very much.
Here we go, so let's just.
Thank you. Yeah, 10.
Hermana, At night, when the moonlight keeps you awake in fear of the light it reflects, there will be no one to arrullarte. You will have hundreds of sleepless nights. Hermana, after dinner, when you hope to divulge the actions of your day, there will be no sobremesa. You will be left alone with your thoughts, and you must get up with haste. Hermana, when you admire and respect someone, you will not be able to revere them with the formal usted. You might feel like no one admires and respects you. Hermana, when you are at work with a cold, with pain and congestion, you cannot be moquienta. You will adopt new phrases, like, suck it up. Hermana, in this country, there's no antier. There's only yesterday, nothing before that. You will stop talking about home in order to cope with your tomorrows. But hermana, atrévete. I know how the smell of liberty drifts down from the Blue Ridge Mountains and up into your rancho nestled between the breasts of your Sierra Madre. I know how the wire transfers ring with prosperity, how the sun reflects off your primo's new truck, how appealing Medicare sounds. It is so hard to resist the pull of the American dream. So you will go, hermana. You will not heed the warnings. You will ignore the signs. Go explore the land of fast roads and fast food. Let the speed of the city swim through your hair because, hermana, in this country you cannot be despeinada.
There was roughly 32 kids who participated, and like Dana said, that we blend the artwork with the actual poem, and it seems to work real well, so we look forward to it every year. One of the things that we're going to do next year is going to move it down to the middle school. We've been able to secure some funding, and we're going to include the middle school. We're going to give them a little bit more guidance, but at the high school, we're going to let them continue to do what they do just from their heart. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, I would like to call on Matt Dixon as we recognize National Board Certified Teachers.
Good evening, Dr. Emery, Ms. Jones, and Board. I'm excited to be here to present to you a group of educators we don't normally get to bring to you, but have gone back and decided that this is very important to the district and to our teachers, and so we'd like to recognize our National Board, those who have just become Nationally Board Certified from our district. Before we do that, I do want to recognize Marcy Harvey, who's not able to be here. She's a teacher at West Forsyth. She's made it her passion to support these teachers. She offers sessions to where she helps them through the process, coaches them, and has really been a champion for these teachers. And as a result, Forsyth County has the 4th largest number of nationally board certified teachers in the state. And on top of that, North Carolina has the most in the nation. So, with that, I would like to recognize those who were able to attend tonight. First, from Middle Fork Elementary, Elizabeth Cox. From Clemens Middle, Shannon Spencer. From Reynolds High School, Heather Bartow-Wiley. From Reagan High School, Michelle Derwin. From Parkland High School, Cynthia Greer. One of our instructional coaches, Rebecca Olson. And from Mount Tabor, Emily Bennett. So again, it's a long process. They have 3 years to complete it. A lot of hard work. They have to submit a portfolio of student work samples, classroom video lessons, a lot of reflection goes into this, and then teacher also taking a content assessment. So it's not something that's easy at all by any means. And I think we're proud to say Forsyth County having the 4th largest in our state is a pretty big accomplishment.
So on behalf of the board, we just want to say thank you again for your hard work and your dedication, and on top of all the things that you have to do. I know from friends who have gone through this process how rigorous and time-consuming. So again, thank you for continuing your development in your profession, and we appreciate it. And I know the board would like to also congratulate you. If you'd just like to turn around and shake hands. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Yes, if you don't mind, I guess whoever. Great, thanks. Thank you for shaking stuff. Not worried about names. How are you doing? Thank you. So that leads us to our public comments on agenda items, and I would like to call on Ms. Rhonda Gordon.
Good evening, Chairwoman Jones, the board, Dr. Emery. As you know, I'm Rhonda Gordon, school social worker in this district and full-time release president for Forsyth County Association of Educators. Tonight I would like to speak on the budget. You have a huge job ahead of you. Senior staff has presented you with their needs and wants and expectations for the coming year. Now it is your job to look at the funds available and to see what will remain in the budget, what will be funded, and where you will find additional funding in the community or elsewhere in order to make those things happen. And perhaps some things will just be plain eliminated. This process is never easy because everyone is passionate about what they would like to see funded. We are hopeful here in the community and in our schools that you use that same care that you've used and that we've seen throughout this past year and all the decisions that you've made. We are looking forward to a budget that shows equality for all students, regardless of their zip code, and equality among educators across all job categories, programs, and services. We hope that careful consideration is taken to avoid the need to eliminate positions currently filled, and perhaps to even provide increases in salaries across the board where it can happen. All students deserve to have access to resources in the form of schools that are safe, inviting, and equipped with the necessary tangible resources and qualified professionals. In addition, not an exception, all educators in this district deserve a work environment that is also inviting, safe, and have access to appropriate resources to perform their jobs. We are depending on you to take a very careful look at the budget to weigh the needs of our students and educators in this district and to present a budget that is fiscally sound for the 2016-2017 school year. Thank you in advance for what you will do.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. So that concludes our comments on agenda items, and that moves us into our discussion items. And first on the agenda this evening will be a continued discussion on our 2016 bond referendum. I believe in front, so that we are on the same page, we have a printout of our bond projects that will. The printout also has the inflationary rate added into that. That's a little over $25 million. So with that added in, and also we have talked, I believe at a Building and Grounds Committee meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, also around having a figure included for some contingency into the bond. We have done our best, our staff has done their very best in this process, which really, we started last June, so we've really been a year at this work, and we want to thank our staff for helping us along through this process. And it has been a very long process. But so we have some contingency funding in there as well, but wanted to open up the floor for board members and discussion, a little bit more reflection after we heard from our community and comments. So would anyone like to add anything to our discussion? Ms. Motzinger.
Yes, After our last meeting, many board members, myself included, were really concerned about the issue of Ashley and the feeling that it was being put onto the next bond referendum, which is something that unfortunately we can't put the whole cost in. However, in some discussion with both Darrell Walker and Bill Powell, we talked about putting in, out of that contingency money, a plan for shovel-ready design plans for the next Ashley to be included in this bond, and that would indeed encourage, if not push the hand of the next bond to make sure that Ashley is the first project out of the gate, and that if we would put in $900,000, and if anybody has questions of either Bill Powell or Darrell about how that figure of $900,000 came about, they're certainly free to answer that.
Well, actually, Darrell or Bill, if someone would maybe just address that as to where that number...
how we came up with $900,000.
That would be great.
So good evening. In all of our projects, the design cost is a percentage of what the projected overall construction dollars are. So it's basically sort of a negotiated rate on what that percentage would be depending on the severity of basically the project itself. So in this case, the $900,000 sort of equates to somewhere in that probably 5 or 6% range of what the actual construction dollars is projected to be at this point in time.
And a further question, if we are designing for a shovel-ready project, can that go forward if we don't know exactly where that project is?
Absolutely. So, obviously, depending on what the land layout is at wherever it's placed, it could be tweaked, but it could definitely be ready to go. And actually, even though Kennedy's in place, Kennedy is one that we designed in the 06 bond, preparing for this bond. So we designed it in 06, sort of put it on the shelf and said, we're going to be ready to roll out when we had some savings and contingency in the last bond. So it wouldn't be the first time that, yes, we've designed something and then we find land at a later date.
Okay. And I think it's really important to communicate to our greater community that once you're invested in that design, you're really committed to, as soon as the resources are available, to building that building. And so I think that would be a real commitment on this board to say we want Ashley built as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Motzinger. Additional comments?
And just to piggyback off of what Elizabeth was saying, Ashley was one of the projects that I didn't want to see come out of the bond from the beginning. But having a plan for the future of Ashley, showing that we do mean when we say we're working on them for the next bond project, this is showing that, hey, we have our plan ready, we're shovel ready, and this is something that we are serious about. And this is something I've been serious about, and a lot of you have heard me nagging about it a lot and talking. And I'm happy to see that a portion of it's not everything that I want to see done for Ashley on this bond, but I am happy to see that it has been included back into the bond project.
And by going ahead and doing that, it allows us to go ahead and collaborate with other partners. If there are other pieces of the school project that we want to include in, it gives us some time to do that as well, so that when we come to you, we've got a full, well thought out plan in place.
Other questions of Mr. Walker at this time?
I do. I'd like to say something. And this lets the East Winston community know that as a board, that we did hear your voice, we did hear your concerns, and so we're taking a real positive step towards meeting those needs and those concerns.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you, Darrell. So as we continue this, and this is kind of the final discussion for the projects, not that we are discussing any order of how the projects will be constructed. That conversation will come at a much later date. I'm assuming in June, so it's really not that long, really. It's April. But I just, before we go much further with our comments, I just want to say, I believe that Ms. Taylor brought this up just a moment ago, that this does not have everything in it that we really would like to have there. We started a year ago with around $600 million worth of identified needs, and but we took into consideration the county's debt policy, other needs that the community has as well, and asked that the commissioners would be having from other entities, and really tried to be mindful of addressing those things that could not continue to wait. I think we also put equity into this formula as we were talking about that. So to Ms. Gordon's comment of everyone's zip code and trying to make sure that we made improvements across the district. So does this fix all of our needs? No, but it puts us in a better place moving forward. And I just want to again commend our staff for looking at things and re-looking at things and bringing things back to us multiple times. I know it's not just receiving an email from one person, but 9 people, and sometimes about the same thing, but that's okay. We appreciate just your hard work and your effort in helping us try to come to this decision. And then, to my fellow board members, I think it's been a process, but we have done quite well working through this, and I think there's been some give and take and some trying to understand someone else's position inside, and we've done, I think, a great job of landing to this place. So I appreciate all of your hard work and your efforts. If we were to add Ashley in, we were looking at that the last time we talked about contingency money. We were speaking of a number of $1.8 million. So if we were to take the design fees for Ashley out of that would place Ashley in our list at $900,000, and that would leave us with a contingency fund of a little over $900,000, $944 and some change. So we're all clear that we're good with that. Okay. So any other discussion on? We can vote on this. We vote on this later this evening by resolution. But any other comments now on the bond? Any other questions? Anything?
I think I have one comment. I think it's been really, really good to have so many people come to the different meetings that we've had. And I want to thank everybody that came out at night and gave their opinions on how they thought the bond should go. And I think by having people voice their opinions on Ashley, it has certainly meant a lot to all of us. And we want to thank everyone for coming, for giving us, this board, different ideas, and we appreciate all the concerns and thoughts that everybody did by coming and letting us know their thoughts on things. Everybody has an opinion, and we really appreciate everybody voicing their opinion.
Right. Okay, thank you, board members. We will move on to our next discussion item, and we will call on Mr. Kerry Crutchfield as we talk about the 2016-2017 proposed budget.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Emery. The Finance Committee has spent a number of hours looking at the needs for the 2016-17 budget year. And this presentation is to give you just a preliminary view. Unfortunately, the law specifies that you have to do this even though we know very little about what our total revenue sources are going to be and what some of the restrictions on those sources might be. But we are required to do this. We're required to have a budget to present to the county commissioners next week. And then we will do a final budget for you in the summer or whenever we have enough information to give you a final budget. Just briefly, I want to give an overview of where we stand. Our continuing goals for our 2016-17 budget year include reading proficiency by the end of 3rd grade for all students, challenging all of our students to their potential, narrowing the achievement gaps that we know we have, maintaining a healthy fund balance to deal with probable future needs, and providing our staff with resources, training, and tools to succeed in achieving the goals above. We are excited about the support that we're getting from various sources. Cook and our other transformation turnaround schools are getting federal dollars to help them. And our community support has just been outstanding in terms of stepping up to the plate, helping us in terms of ideas, helping us in terms of funding, and especially for things such as teacher and leader training, and that's tremendously exciting to me. Our revenue outlook, we do, because we have a funding formula, have an idea of what our county funding will be. The current information on the county funding indicates an increase in our basic appropriation of $2.85 million, plus an increase of $53,000 in the technology support appropriation. Those increases will give us total numbers of $117.95 million for current expense and capital outlay. Our technology support appropriation would be $1,490,000, and our annual capital maintenance appropriation that we've had for a number of years at $1,735,000. The final formula numbers, according to the county manager, will be calculated after the April tax collections are known, and we are still hopeful that there might be some enhancements to these numbers after those numbers are known. In terms of this year's budget, we had budgeted to use $4 million of our little over $13 million fund balance. For a variety of reasons, our current estimates are that we will use only $1.5 million of that $4 million, savings of $2.5 million over what you had budgeted. That should leave us with a June 30th, 2016 fund balance of approximately $11.5 million. If our projections are accurate for this year, we will have used approximately $3.7 million in fund balance over the past 3 fiscal years, 3 of the most challenging fiscal years in our history, I will point out, because of changes in state funding and in terms of still trying to recover from an economic recession. There are several reasons for our fund balance savings that are on this slide. I won't go over those in detail. I will point out that we have implemented some utility saving strategies and low fuel prices that have contributed a great deal to the fund balance savings. In terms of state projections, the short session of the General Assembly is likely to deal with the budget necessities and a few other high priority items, but we aren't expecting too much new or different in the short session budget. There are funds available, we think, for the best pay increase in the past 8 years. That being said, we still don't know what that looks like, and we don't know how much better it will be than years past. Past history does indicate increases in matching retirement and hospital insurance, both of which have local budget implications. And we desperately need new principal assistant principal pay plans in the state of North Carolina, but we're not expecting those in the short session, hopefully in the long session to follow. In terms of the projected pay and benefit increases, we have suggested budgeting for licensed employee base pay increases of 3%, classified employee base pay increases of 2%. I want to stress that these are just projections at this point and a way to reserve local funds to match the possible state funds. The total cost of the local budget of those two would be $1.3 million. And again, if the history of the past 3 to 5 years continues, both the matching retirement and hospital insurance rates will be increased to some extent. We are projecting a local budget impact of those of $300,000. So those pay and benefits increases would have a projected impact of $1.6 million on our local budget. As always, it could be higher or lower depending on the eventual state budget language. But we propose waiting until the General Assembly's actions are finalized and our total revenue sources are known to determine changes in teacher supplements and some other local pay initiatives that we have on the back burner, hoping that we get enough funding to deal with them. Some 2016-17 budget firsts. For the first time in a long time at least, we're budgeting for a decrease in utilities costs due to taking Haynes-Lawrence offline, utility saving strategies, and lower or no projected rate increases from our utility carriers. We have lower increases in dental and workers' compensation claims costs due to cost-saving strategies and increased focus on settling some of our older workers' compensation claims. And we are experiencing reduced local textbook costs due to the increase in the state allotment for the first time in 6 years this year, and increased reliance on digital instructional resources, which we think is the way of the future and is something that seems to be helping in our instructional strategies. There are still some negative impacts to the budget, some fairly small ones. I'll just point out a couple of them. We are expecting an increase in charter school students, both in brick and mortar schools and in virtual charter schools. And we are proposing to implement middle school baseball and softball in our interscholastic competitions, and that will cost some extra money in terms of equipment and coaches. The total of those negative impacts would be a little over $500,000. Some projected savings, again, the utility and fuel savings, almost $750,000, which is substantial savings. This year we had to match a one-time $750 bonus for all of our employees that the state granted, and that cost the local budget $450,000 that will not be repeated. We know that we will have substantial teacher turnover, which is a bad thing, but in terms of budget savings, it does create some savings as we replace with lesser experienced teachers. Our local textbook savings that we mentioned earlier, our workers' comp and unemployment savings of $50,000, a couple of other miscellaneous type savings. So the total projected savings is about $2.3 million, which again helps substantially in not having to rely on budgeting fund balance for next year. So at this point, after all of the previous slides and based entirely on preliminary information and projections, we're within about $400,000 of a balanced budget without reliance on fund balance. In order to submit to you a balanced budget to approve tonight, we propose to hold off on certain equipment replacements and other capital expenditure enhancements until better budgetary information is known. Tonight, we do ask you to approve a balanced budget resolution, the details of which are in the book that you have a copy of. The budget resolution itself is also at your place. By adopting a preliminary budget resolution, it gives us something to operate on July 1 in case the state does not adopt a budget by then. And then just briefly, our next steps. The official county budget presentation is scheduled for Thursday, May 5th at 2 o'clock. We encourage any of you that can to join us for that presentation. The county generally approves their budget at their first meeting in June after holding a public budget hearing in late May. When we know the public hearing date and time, we will let you know in case you want to attend that also. The General Assembly convened their short session yesterday, and we are still hearing encouraging talk of a state budget by or before July 1. We are hearing that the governor's budget will come out this week, which will be the first step in the process. If we do have a state budget by early July, we can begin our final budget discussions in August and hopefully have a budget in place close to or shortly after school starts this coming year. Any questions?
Thank you, Carrie. We have, I guess it was last Tuesday, we had a special budget meeting as well, so we've talked around these numbers quite a bit, but we thank you and the entire finance staff for really pulling some additional information together for us and taking us to this place, so thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
So next, Ms. Jenkins will discuss our SRO and Super Kids program.
Good evening, Chairwoman Jones, Dr. Emery, and board members. I do want to first clarify that you do not have an action item on the agenda tonight that pertains to these two programs. We wanted to bring you some informational tidbits first about the programs. We are currently in the process of negotiating and finalizing our SRO as well as Super K contracts for the next year. So we wanted to at least offer you this information first to see if there are any questions or concerns that you have as we're finalizing these contracts. So don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have a question as I'm going through these programs, and I will try to be brief. I also have Kathy Jordan here, who is very much in the trenches when it comes to our Super Kids programs. If you have specific questions about the curriculum that aren't addressed by me during my presentation, as well as any feedback that you'd like to receive, I will call her up when we get to that part, just so that you can hear from her about some of the feedback that we've received about our Super Kids program. So just briefly, I'll give you an introduction about the programs, some background about how the program came into place, the duties and responsibilities of the officers in the respective programs, and some key terms of the agreements and the current practices that are in place. So first, turning to the SRO program, we currently have 3 agreements on file with the Kernersville Police, the Winston-Salem Police Department, as well as the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office for SRO services at our schools. Historically, those agreements kind of varied. You know, they were executed at different times over the years, and there's been a number of changes. So in 2014, I was going to say last year, how time flies. In 2014, the board approved more standardized contracts with an expiration date of June 30th, 2016. So we kind of reconciled those 3 contracts to make sure that they are in line in the same timeline. So turning first to the Kernersville Police Department, they are the smallest of the departments, and so therefore they have the smallest number of schools. They provide SRO services in East Forsyth Middle and High, Kernersville Middle, and Southeast Middle School, and they've been doing so since 2008. The Forsyth County Sheriff's Office also has a smaller group of schools. When they first started in 2009, they actually covered a larger amount of schools because the Sheriff's Office is the only department that has the jurisdiction to cover the entire county. So in 2011, the contract was modified to gradually reduce the number of schools covered by the sheriff, and those schools were picked up by the Winston-Salem Police Department. But you'll see that they cover Clements Middle, Flat Rock, Reagan, Walkertown Middle and High, and West Forsyth. And then the Winston-Salem Police Department by far has the largest number of schools. I won't read them all, but you can see on the screen the schools that they provide SRO services for. And again, these are the schools that are generally within the center and the city limits of the county. So the overall purpose and premise of the SRO program is to provide for the general safety and security of students and staff members during the day and at school-related events and after-school activities. That's the general overall premise. But I want to turn specifically to a few examples of individual officer responsibilities. Number 1, officers are expected to answer questions and educate students, staff members, and the community about the criminal justice system, as well as the role and the function of law enforcement agencies. They also can counsel students, either at the request of the principal or their parent where it's needed, if there are special circumstances where they feel a student can benefit from counseling from an SRO officer. They also are expected to be present in the bus areas, but not to serve as a crossing guard. We do have a separate contract for crossing guard services, but just to be there to monitor traffic and to maintain safety. And then also to provide security services during extracurricular activities, such as athletic events and other events that happen after the school day. I do want to emphasize for a moment these first 2 responsibilities. We in the district believe very strongly that our SRO officers are not just an enforcement arm. They're not just there to enforce the criminal laws and investigate criminal conduct, but also to be an education and educational resource for students and staff. So I do want to emphasize that that is a role that we expect of the SRO officers, and the supervisors and the folks that manage the program also feel very strongly that that's something that SRO officers should be involved in. So in addition to the previous duties, SRO officers obviously investigate criminal activity that's committed on school property, assist as needed in the enforcement of criminal laws, especially when it comes to student conduct that also may constitute a crime, responding to disruptions and criminal offenses on school property, including the reporting of certain mandatory offenses that we required by law to report to law enforcement. So now that I've given you an overview of what SRO officers are supposed to do, there are a few things that specifically are in our contract that they're not supposed to do. For example, they're not supposed to get involved in administrative disputes, anything that's non-criminal. However, they can, at the request of the principal, if it's necessary to either maintain the security of bystanders or control the crowd, that sort of thing, just to kind of maintain order and discipline. But that's, again, in kind of an ancillary role. They also can get involved if there's some sort of a search or if the administrative function uncovers some sort of evidence of criminal activity. SRO officers are also not expected to transport students in their law enforcement vehicles unless it is incident to some sort of legitimate law enforcement purpose. I believe the various agencies do have internal policies as to when they may transport students or individuals in general when it's not a law enforcement function, but we expect that whatever that policy is as far as that agency, that will be followed if it's not a law enforcement function. So just some key terms of the current contracts that I'd like to just run by you and make sure that you're aware of. Number one, our contract provides for one officer at each of the schools that are covered under the agreements. These officers are not school district employees, so they are 100% employees of their respective agencies. So their agencies cover their benefits, their salary, any insurance, for example, workers' compensation insurance, all of that is covered by their agency. We just contract with the agency to provide the SRO coverage at the schools. There also are a number of supervisors that are contemplated under the contracts. I believe the agencies have a general policy or practice for every 5 officers, there's at least 1 supervisor. So there's a couple of supervisors for each agency. In addition, the Sheriff's Office provides 2 additional officers in its evening deputy program to patrol the grounds, respond to security alerts, and just kind of generally enforce safety in our properties during the evenings. So currently we have 1 SRO officer at every middle and high school. We do not have SRO officers at elementary schools. We do have Super Kids officers, but I'll talk about the differences between those in just a minute. The exception to that is early college and middle college because they are on the campus of Forsyth Tech. They're covered under the Forsyth Tech campus security. So as far as access to information, there are circumstances that may arise when an SRO officer may need access to student information. And in May of 2014, the board approved an amendment to our student confidentiality policies to allow an SRO officer access to certain directory information. Directory information is information that's generally considered not necessarily intrusive to a student's education file. So for example, their name, their address, their email address, their parents' information. SRO officers have access to inspect that information if needed, for example, for an investigatory purpose or criminal activity. However, if they need additional confidential student information, they must comply with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which we affectionately refer to as FERPA. And of course, they always have access to what's considered public records. We have obviously various camera and surveillance systems in our schools, and so SRO officers are allowed to have access to those videos for the purposes of investigating or prosecuting criminal misconduct. But again, if it's for any additional or outside purpose, or if it's an outside law enforcement officer, they have to comply with the requirements of FERPA. Last year, or the year before, we had the Winston-Salem Police Department, I think, was the first in the county to kind of roll out body-worn cameras. So the cameras were either stationed on a head device or on their lapel, and they record incidents throughout the day. And they have a certain protocol as far as how they record incidents and when they activate the cameras. But the cameras are owned and operated by the police department, so any footage that is maintained or recorded on those devices are not considered education records. They're not considered student records. So even the district wouldn't necessarily have access to those recordings. They're considered confidential criminal investigative records. It's my understanding that the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office is going to start rolling out body cameras in the near future as well. So the annual cost for the SRO program, at least the current most recent figures for each of the departments is listed on the screen. We do expect, even though we're still finalizing the numbers, we do expect those figures to stay around the same for the upcoming school year. So when we finalize those terms, I will come back to you with a final contract. I will go through the major terms such as compensation, and it will be offered to you for your approval. In addition to the yearly cost for running the program, which covers salary, fringe benefits, use of vehicle, mileage, those sorts of things, officers do have the ability to earn what's called extra duty compensation, and this is the typical example. You have officers who are hired to come to football games and provide security and safety patrol during football games. And those are paid at an hourly rate. That's separate and apart from what we pay in our SRO contract. This amount typically comes from the schools, but this shows you what the hourly rates are for those officers. Are there any questions so far about the school resource officer program?
Just a question on the Winston-Salem Police. Aren't they looking to raise police officer salaries by about 2 or 3%? Will that affect our contract?
It is possible. Our contract does provide for a certain deadline to inform us if there are going to be increases in the costs. That deadline has passed, and so we have not received that information. But again, we're still finalizing those terms. It's entirely possible that that might affect it. So just transitioning really quickly to the Super Kids program. The Super Kids program is run just entirely by the Winston-Salem Police. So there's no sheriff's office involvement, although there is somewhat of a Kernersville Police Department involvement for the schools that are in Kernersville. The district has been committed to this program since the late 1990s. Prior to that, we had the DARE program, which I think most people are familiar with that, which focused more so on substance abuse prevention and awareness. But the great thing about the Super Kids program, well, I think it's one of the great things about the program, is it's developed more locally, and so the local agencies and the district have more of a say as far as what the curriculum is, what the materials are, how it's delivered, and whether or not there need to be any changes because of what may be going on, around in the world. So I think that's a distinguishing factor for the Super Kids programs. The DARE program, although it definitely was a great program, there was a national curriculum, so there was less flexibility as far as what could be taught and offered in the schools. So the Super Kids program is very similar in that it's taught by 8 officers who are entirely the employees of the respective agencies. They rotate around the district, each covering a number of elementary schools. All of our elementary schools are covered in the Super Kids program, with the exception of the 4 schools in Kernersville. They are covered by the Kernersville Police Department. The curriculum that's involved in the Super Kids program is a little bit more broad than just substance abuse and awareness. They teach more, the goal is to educate the student and to teach them more holistically. So they have character building lessons, conflict resolution, decision-making, life skills, bullying awareness prevention, as well as substance abuse prevention and addressing any sort of risky behavior. The programs are taught in kindergarten, 2nd, and 5th grade, but of course they are delivered in an age-appropriate manner and the materials are age-appropriate. So for kindergartners they receive 5 30-minute lessons. The officers schedule these lessons at the schools as they have, their normal rotation process, so they will visit schools throughout the year and speak to the different grade levels. And those lessons consist primarily of a session that deals with officers as friends, so, acquainting children with officers and seeing them as resources and not necessarily in a punitive manner. Ways to be safe at home, in the community, and also from strangers. Dealing with conflict and anger management, as well as bullying. In 2nd grade, they receive 3 45-minute lessons, typically about conflict resolution, anger management, drug and other substance abuse awareness, peer pressure, and bullying. And then in the fifth graders actually received more lessons. They received 6 60-minute lessons about some of the same topics: safety awareness at home, school, and in the public, self-esteem, image, peer pressure, again, conflict resolution and anger management, recognizing bullying and gang involvement, domestic violence and abuse, as well as reporting incidents of abuse, and substance abuse awareness. So the difference between the Super Kids officers and the SROs, the main function is, or the main difference I would say, is that Super Kids officers are not there in any kind of enforcement way. They're not there to investigate criminal conduct or maintain the safety and security of the premises like the SRO officers are. They are there to teach the children the curriculum and answer questions that they may have, but they're not there every day. So they're in different schools every day. When possible, they're also expected to attend district or school functions, again, as being a resource and providing education for the students and the community. Again, like I stated, they're under the direct supervision of the police department, so they're not our employees. We pay a fee and we contract with the agency for this service. Our current cost for this program is $125,000. I'll tell you that when the program was initially put into place in the 1990s, the original cost for the service was $110,000. So you can see over the years, there's not been a substantial change in the cost, but that is the current cost for the program. I will tell you that there's at least been some discussion about yearly smaller increases for the program going forward if we entered into a contract that spanned over the course of a few years. But again, we're still in the process of finalizing those terms, negotiating with the departments, but at least that is a consideration that has been made. So you might be thinking, why are we talking about this now? There's nothing on the agenda for you to vote on tonight. As I stated before, the SRO contracts will expire in June, so you will very soon be receiving a contract for your consideration and approval. The Super Kids contract has not been modified since 1998. There was a change in 2011 to add a little bit to the cost, but the basic contract has not changed since the 1990s. So as you can imagine, there have been some curriculum changes. The practice and procedures have changed a little bit. So we will be providing you again with a Super Kids contract for your consideration in the very near future once we finalize those terms. So unless you have any other questions for me, I would just ask Ms. Jordan to come up just briefly to talk to you about if you have any specific curriculum questions, and just briefly about the feedback she's received for the program.
Dr. Emery, members of the board, it's good to be here tonight to talk to you about the Super Kids program. And we're very fortunate tonight because our security officer for the evening is our Super Kids supervisor, what I work very closely with. So Sergeant Todd Hart, I'm going to ask you to come a little bit closer in case you have specific questions about the curriculum itself, and he will certainly be able to answer those even better than I, because he's very familiar with the curriculum. Actually, Sergeant Hart and I sat down today and we began to look over some evaluation, well, really not evaluations, but feedback that teachers had given us about the Super Kids program. And you know, over the years, I've come to think of that program less as a law enforcement program and more as an educator and a prevention program. Yes, they do show up in our schools dressed appropriately as law enforcement officers, but it's really more about the relationships that they establish with the kids and the connections they make with the kids. So we actually looked at some of the comments that teachers from our district had about the Super Kids program. And I need to tell you this, preface these comments with the information that our Super Kids officers really don't see this as just a job. They see this more as a mission, and they see this more as a way to make a difference and connect with our children and provide them the emotional support that they need and the development of life skills. And so they see this as a very comprehensive program, as Dion said, a holistic program working to support educators in our schools. and they very much see themselves as educators in our schools, providing different services, but important services to reinforce what is going on in the classroom. So some of the comments were that this teacher loved the Super Kids officers because they connected with children, and they actually love to come in and discuss important issues with the children. I think an important hallmark of any good educator is that kids feel like the teachers and their educator, the people they're learning from, they feel comfortable with these people. And that's what was immediately observed, that students feel comfortable, they ask questions, they share their thoughts, they're highly engaged with the activities. And over the years, as Sergeant Hart and I have worked on the curriculum itself, we tried to make it more interactional. We tried to create role plays and different opportunities that really do engage the students. Students really look forward to the class, and this was stated over and over again, and the students feel very comfortable as the officers are approachable, and they really engage the students in a variety of ways. I think we'd all agree these are the hallmarks of a good educator. But I think the summary statement that really brought it home for me, at least, and prevention is the nature of my heart and who I am. This educator wrote, "Prevention is the best way to keep our students safe, and our community needs more. Community needs more of these kinds of educational opportunities." And Super Kids officers don't just see themselves as teachers within the classroom itself. They really go the extra mile, and they're out there being visible, seen in the community. And just a few of the activities that we've documented Super Kids officers doing, they've been involved with our annual Stand Up, Step Up prevention walk against bullying, and they're like rock stars when they come to these events. Kids seek them out and want to be seen with them. They've been involved with our Latino Achievers, Reading Across America programs, helping with after-school programs, career days, mentoring programs, freshman orientation. I think that's a little beyond, actually, 5th grade. So they're just out there doing a lot of different things. But Officer Hart said to me today, he says, "I think it's really important that they're out there serving our community and serving our district at large." So if you may have some questions for Sergeant Hart about the curriculum itself, but it's an honor that I have in working with a man that has such dedicated passion for working with children and has such great officers. It makes my job a lot easier.
Do you have any questions for us or Sergeant Hart about the program or any of the key terms of the agreements? Well, we will be presenting you with these contracts for your approval in the next couple of weeks, so thank you very much.
I would like to thank you, Sergeant Hart, for supervising this program as well as being with us so often at our meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to our curriculum committee report. Ms. Clark.
Okay. We met and we covered a variety of topics, and curriculum is historically and continues to be the third Tuesday of every month. It's open to the public. So the first thing we did was cover a piece of new material that's going to be incorporated into our wellness teaching through the district, and we had Nancy Sutton, who is our wellness and health guru, to come to us and talk about SB 279, which is a state bill that was passed in September that causes us to have to incorporate the concept of human trafficking into our health curriculum. And so that will begin, I think it's begun this spring already, and will be touched on in several grades, starting with the 6th grade. So again, that came down from the state, and if you follow the news, you know that's an important topic that kids need to be aware of how to avoid that situation, and they need to understand the concept of it and how to look out for it. The second thing, I wanted to make a note too that we're going to provide as part of that professional development for teachers and support from them as they begin to incorporate that in their curriculum. The third thing, we're going to have some changes in our, what is formerly called family life education. We're going to move that into life management skills in the 9th grade. Let's see, the former family life education will be moved from life management skills in the 9th grade to health in the 10th grade. And it'll focus more on the successful skills, character education, and financial literacy. So life management type things. And we felt as a curriculum committee that financial issues and teaching was an important thing that is new and is going to be receiving more focus. Let's see, we also approved a CTE course to go into place and in fact in Carver this fall. And that will be an information technology pilot course for this upcoming school year. And that's going to be part of its magnet theme. Right. So we were excited to see that, teaching all aspects of information technology, and it will start in the 9th grade at Carver. And then the last thing, we heard from Dr. Symington, Kenneth Symington, who is our Chief Academic Officer, and Kay Landry, our Dropout Prevention Program Specialist. We talked about the definition of dropouts and graduation rate, and that of course ties into our goals for the district. And we talked about the fact that we've had a decrease in our dropout rate, so we were thrilled about that. And I just wanted to make note that Kay informed us that Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools is cited as one of the systems with the largest 3-year decreases in dropout rates, and that's for 6 years in a row. So kudos. At least we know that we're working. We've got a lot of work to do in a lot of areas in the district. But, we like to celebrate the positive when we can, and so that is definitely a positive that we're moving the needle in the right direction. So, wanted to make that note. I think that I covered, one more thing, sorry. We are increasing, or I should say bringing puberty education back to the family life curriculum in earlier, because we are seeing puberty at a younger age in boys and girls. And so we're going to be teaching 2 lessons in the 4th grade and then 5 lessons in the 5th grade where it already had begun. So just wanted to raise awareness on that. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Vice Chairman Barr, the Finance Committee report.
Okay, we simply preview the 2016-17 preliminary budget, and then also discuss the amendment number 5 to budget and transfer number 5. That's it.
Okay, Mr. Singletary is not with us this evening, so to summarize the Policy Committee report, basically we spoke about policy and administrative regulation 6140, which was the family life education. I think Ms. Clark, some of that came from the conversation from curriculum about the changes. So it was a pretty short meeting. Ms. Jenkins, is that? That's accurate. That's accurate. Okay, wonderful. So that concludes our discussion items for the evening, and we move into our action items. The first item will be to consider approval of a resolution petitioning the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners to hold a bond referendum for school construction and renovations. And if you can bear with me, we will read the resolution. I'll do my best to summarize the list of projects. So the resolution requesting and petitioning the Board of Commissioners for the County of Forsyth, North Carolina, to provide necessary funds for the purpose of paying the cost of school facilities. The Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools Board of Education hereby finds and determines as follows: that it is necessary in order to maintain adequate facilities for the proper operation and management of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Public School Administrative Unit to acquire, construct, expand, and improve additional public school facilities, including without or limitation to 2 new middle schools, pre-kindergarten center, and land for an Eastern Elementary School, replacement schools for Brunson Elementary, Conoke Elementary, Lawrence Middle, and Paisley IB Magnet, and design fees for a replacement for Ashley Academy. Additions to Easton Elementary, Griffith Elementary, Ward Elementary, and Wiley Magnet Middle. Renovations to East Forsyth High School, John F. Kennedy High School, North Forsyth High School, and Philo Hill Magnet. safety improvements to stadiums at Mount Tabor High School and Glenn High School, safety and transportation improvements at Wiley Magnet Middle, Reynolds High School, Southeast Middle, and Meadowlark Elementary and Middle School, and Parkland High School, maintenance and capital improvements at 35 schools, technology improvements at all schools, and safety and camera improvements at many schools. The estimated cost of the project is approximately $350 million. It is necessary to request the Board of Commissioners for the County of Forsyth, North Carolina, to provide the necessary funds to pay the cost of the project. The Board hereby requests and petitions the Board of Commissioners for the County of Forsyth, North Carolina, to take all necessary steps by the issuance of bonds or otherwise to provide funds for paying the cost of the projects described in Section 1 above. This resolution shall take effect upon its adoption. So with all of that being said, I would ask for a motion to approve the resolution. Okay, so I see Ms. Motzinger and second by Ms. Calvert-Hayes. All in favor? All right.
I just want to confirm that the order you read it in, we haven't set priorities yet for the order of the projects.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Johnson. That's exactly, that is correct. The order that we read is no order of construction, and that's an important point. So thank you for bringing that out. So the resolution passed, right, unanimously. Do you have any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
No question. I just want to say, again, I know some of this has happened, but you just couldn't be in a prouder moment. This has been a long, difficult, challenging process. When we started, it felt unmanageable and overwhelming, and I just want to applaud your leadership, your dedication to learning as much as possible. I think that your transparency and your willingness to learn and lead at the same time have brought us to a really superior outcome here. And I also want to say thank you, because some folks on our staff, this is their job, but other folks, this work goes on top of other full-time work. And we would not be here without Daryl's leadership, without Bill's sort of fastidious, keeping us in the weeds when we need to be, all of our operations folks, our finance folks. Theo has worked magic to get us here as well, and it's been a team effort, and I shouldn't name names because so many people have been involved, but I think this is really very powerful outcome. I think it touches, like you said, all of our district, and I just want to say how good it feels to be here in this moment after the long journey, which felt kind of like, oh dear, how are we ever going to do this a few months back, but feels really very natural, and I think in the best interest of kids and our district. So thank you. It's been a pleasure to walk with you through this.
Just one more thing I want to say. I want to thank you also, because you have been taking jabs and everything else, punches, and you have done a fantastic job as our superintendent.
Other comments for the bond? If not, we'll move on to our next item, action item.
I did have one other comment, and that's to the public. We got to this point, but making it come true depends on you, and it's going to depend on the public to turn out and vote in November and support all of our children and our staff. So we've worked hard, but now it's time for you to work hard as well.
Thank you, Ms. Motzinger. Okay, we will move on to action item B, and that's to consider approval of the preliminary 2016-2017 budget. So I have a motion by Mr. Barr. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Clark. Any discussion? No? All in favor? Thank you. Consider approval of funding and architectural design contract, change order for Lawrence Paisley Combined Replacement School. So I have a motion by Mr. Vic Johnson, second by Ms. Taylor. Any discussion? I know we have talked about this at length at Building and Grounds Committee meetings. All in favor of the motion? Thank you. Consider approval of the CTE pilot course at Carver High School, Information Technology. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Do I have a second? Ms. Clark? All in favor? And that moves us to our consent agenda items. We have 3 items on the consent agenda: approval of minutes of the March 22nd, 2016 meeting, approval of minutes of the April 12th, 2016 meeting, and the general personnel report. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Mr. Barr, and a second by Mr. Vic Johnson. All in favor? Wonderful. Okay. Do we have any speakers? No. Wonderful. So if there's no other business before us this evening, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Thank you for joining us on your school channel, Cable 2.